Welcome back everyone. Let's go ahead and do another comparison this time around between the brand new Google Pixel 4a and the, almost year-old iPhone 11. Now I will tell you this, there's a lot of pros and cons for both phones, but the price tag of the Google Pixel 4a is extremely impressive. Now the 4a was actually given to me by Google, so that was actually very kind of them to do that, but that's not going to change my opinion at all. I was super rude to the Pixel 4 last year, but I feel like with the 4a, they actually did a pretty decent job, and I'll explain why in a second. But the 4a is selling for $350, which is an extremely important thing to keep in mind. This thing is not competing with the flagships. It's not even competing with the iPhone 11, to be honest, but it's still pretty impressive to see what Google was able to do at that price tag of $350. With the iPhone 11 right now, you can pick up brand new for $700, but I would really recommend not picking it up for that price. You can easily get them for like $100 to maybe even $200 cheaper than that. And you might as well even wait for the iPhone 12s to come out because they're going to be even cheaper. So looking on the front, they're both going to be, a little bit different, but also similar at the same time, which is very, very interesting. So starting off with the iPhone 11, we have that 6.1 inch liquid retina IPS panel, and it's an 828 by 1792 display. Definitely not the sharpest looking display, definitely not the best looking phone ever anyway, but it's not a bad panel, and I have to give Apple credit. They did a pretty decent job with this panel. The specs on paper mean one thing, but whenever I use this phone, and I make a lot of videos with this phone on my main channel, even on my second channel, I use this phone for a lot of different things, and Apple did a pretty decent job with this panel. They made a pretty good looking panel. They have True Tone on it, but to be honest, it still has a lot of work to be done, and with the iPhone 12s, they're going to be switching to OLED, I think, throughout the lineup, but the iPhone 11's display really isn't that bad. But when you look at something like the Google Pixel 4a, which has a 5.81 inch OLED display that's 1080p, it really makes you scratch your head like, how is Google able to make a phone of this price where a phone company, a technology company as big as the iPhone, iPhone is one of the biggest phones, at least in America, and they couldn't do a much better job at a higher price tag? It really doesn't make any sense to me, but the Pixel 4a's display is definitely its strongest asset. I think the display and the way it looks, I think, is probably one of its strongest assets, that and the software. For sure, I think this phone's display is really good. It looks just like the Galaxy S10e's display from last year with that hole punch display, and it doesn't even have a notch, which is so crazy because the iPhone 11 that's more expensive has a notch. So that's also something that's pretty weird, something to keep in mind. But and definitely when it comes down to the display, I feel like the Pixel 4a's display is a little bit better. The PPI is also higher, but I still don't think the iPhone 11's display is that bad. You know what I mean? Like, I still think that's a pretty decent display. If we're talking budget phones, the Pixel 4a definitely by far, when you consider the price and everything, the 4a did a much better job with the money that you're going to spend on it. But I still have to give credit to where credit is due, and I think the iPhone 11 did a pretty decent job with the display as well. You have a lightning port on the bottom of the iPhone 11, while on the Pixel 4a you have a USB Type-C port, but you also have a headphone jack, which is really crazy. In my opinion, I honestly am never going to use it, but it's still pretty impressive that they were able to keep that type of technology. The 3A had it, and it's funny because we're looking at phones now that have a headphone jack as if they're like such a crazy feature, when every phone like 4 years ago had a headphone jack, which is so funny. So for sure, I'll tell you, the headphone jack is one thing that the Pixel 4a has going for it. And on the back, this is where things are a little bit interesting. So a single camera setup on the 4a, a dual camera setup on the iPhone 11, but this is the difference. The iPhone 11's build quality is far superior than the one on the Pixel 4a. The Pixel 4a definitely feels like a pretty cheap phone, I'm not gonna lie. It looks pretty good, but when you feel it in the hand, it definitely, you can tell, it's all plastic everywhere. It's not cheap. Like, if I were to hold it in my hand, I wouldn't necessarily feel like I had a cheap phone. I would just feel like I had a super plastic phone, like it's just, not the best feeling thing. It feels kind of like a Galaxy S5 in a way, you know what I mean? Without the removable back or anything, it kind of feels like that. It gives me that type of hype. The iPhone 11, on the other hand, has, aluminum on the sides and glass on the back. It's a very good feeling phone. It does not feel cheap at all. And that's one of its biggest assets and highlights is the build quality. For that $700 price tag, you're getting a phenomenally built phone. Or in the Pixel 4a, for that $350 price tag, you're getting a phenomenal looking phone. However, it might not feel the best. So in terms of the outside, those are basically the main differences. Some other minor things: the iPhone 11 has IP certification. The Pixel 4a does not have any IP certification, which honestly to me is kind of a big deal. But when you're paying for that, price tag at the $350, is it a big deal? that's something you're going to have to keep in mind. So, kind of keep that in mind as we're progressing through this video. So that kind of covers it up in terms of the outside. Now hitting on the software, obviously iOS, Android, whoever likes whichever, you can pick whatever. They're both kind of the same thing. Now on iOS, on the iPhone 11, you're starting off with iOS 13. On the Google Pixel 4a, you're starting off with the Android 10. In terms of longevity, I'm probably going to sit here and say that the iPhone 11 is going to last longer than the Pixel 4a. The 4a is going to last for a very long time too for an Android device. So regardless, whichever one you pick up as of this year, you're going to be perfectly set for a while. It's not like one's going to, completely outlast the other one, but the iPhone 11 is definitely going to last a couple more years than the Pixel 4a in terms of stock software support. However, the Pixel 4a does have that capability of having custom ROMs and all that good stuff. So whenever that capability comes out, whenever custom ROMs do come out for this phone, you're going to have that type of capability, which is an extremely important thing to keep in mind. So I think in terms of the software, I will probably give the edge to the iPhone 11. But that custom ROM support on the Pixel 4a is also very important to keep in mind. Now hitting on the performance, I did a speed test so you guys can kind of watch that as I'm kind of talking about the specs and the performance. The iPhone 11 has that Apple A13 Bionic chip, hex-core CPU with 4 gigs of RAM on all the models, where the Google Pixel 4a has that Qualcomm Snapdragon 730 chipset, an octa-core CPU, an Adreno 618 GPU, and 6 gigs of RAM. There's only one model of the Pixel 4a, and that one has 128 gigs of storage. Now, when it came down to the performance, and as you guys saw from the speed test, I was kind of split in the middle. There was really no way. Like I sometimes the Pixel 4a was faster, sometimes the iPhone 11 was faster, and I think at the end of the day, maybe the Pixel 4a was the faster one every single time. However, like I said, there were times where the iPhone 11 was faster, so it was almost split in the middle. However, I will say, I think I still get the smoother performance from the iPhone 11. I feel like for some reason Apple just does such a good job at their software and just the fluidity of it. And anytime I use the iPhone 11, it's just smooth. When I swipe up, when I do the gestures and all that stuff, it works perfectly fine. With the Pixels and really with any phone I've had, not even just the Pixel 4a, but with my Galaxy S20, like the most expensive phones you can buy, I still seem to have some glitchiness sometimes when I swipe up or when I use the gestures and all that stuff. I'm not really too sure why that keeps happening, but I think that's something that Android needs to fix. Apple has kind of been using gestures, I guess, for a little bit longer than stock Android has, so that's another thing to keep in mind. But I think when it comes down to the performance, one really doesn't blow the other one out of the water, but that's actually more surprising for the Pixel 4a, that it was even able to maintain the same speed, if not beat it, when it comes down to the iPhone 11 speed comparison. So that honestly shocked me. So like I said, I think the iPhone 11 is probably the smoother one, but the Pixel 4a may be the faster one, but it's almost split in half, I'll be honest. Now moving on to the cameras, like I said, dual camera setup on the iPhone 11, a 12 megapixel wide-angle lens and then a 12 megapixel ultra-wide sensor, where the Pixel 4a has a 12.2 megapixel wide-angle lens. Both can shoot 4K videos, but the iPhone 11 does have the ability to shoot 4K at 60. The Pixel 4a does not have any 4K at 60 capability. Is that a big deal? That's something you're going to have to ask yourself. Me personally, it would be nice to have it, so honestly for me it may be a big deal. And I do think because of that extra camera sensor, it automatically almost makes the iPhone 11 a better deal in my opinion. The camera on the iPhone 11s were really good. The Pixel 4a's camera is not bad, but I definitely do think the iPhone 11 has the better camera setup. 8 megapixel sensor on the Pixel 4a on the front, 12 megapixel sensor on the iPhone 11. You can do 4K at 60 on that front camera as well, and definitely I'll tell you the iPhone 11 I think is the better camera for sure. Now ending it off with the battery life, you have a 3110 mAh battery on the iPhone 11 and a 3140 mAh battery on the Pixel 4a. Now between these two, I still think the iPhone 11 has the better battery life, but here's the other thing. You have wireless charging on the iPhone 11 where you don't have any wireless charging on the Pixel 4a. So that automatically kind of makes the iPhone 11 a better deal as well. And that's actually really surprising that Google was not able to put in wireless charging on a budget phone like this. If you guys remember the Nexus 4 a couple years ago, that was a long time ago, that was able to have wireless charging at a price tag that was pretty similar to this one, and that was so many years ago. So I understand they have to cut costs. They probably had to put all that extra money into the screen itself, but still it would have been really nice to have wireless charging on this type of phone. So to kind of sum up this video and to answer the question, which phone should you pick up, honestly I do think the iPhone 11 is the better phone, but the Pixel 4a may be the better value per dollar. So if you're trying to get a phone right now and if you need something that'll last you for a while, the iPhone 11, like I said, is probably the better way to go. You're getting longer software support, The performance is smooth. It's a very good feeling phone, very premium. The battery is really nice. The camera is really nice. It's a very safe phone. There's really not too much to hate on it. But the Pixel 4a is there for people who don't want to spend the $700. I mean, it's twice the price as a Pixel 4a, but it's not twice as nice, if you know what I mean. The Pixel 4a is a very good phone for the price, I think. And if you're okay with the slight of cutting of corners, the no IP certification, no wireless charging, and single camera setup, then I think you'll be good with the Pixel 4a. The performance is still great. The screen is great. It looks better than the iPhone 11. And I think it has a lot of value as well. So that's really pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count. So it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. More importantly, everything else. I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.